every time you have that this or this, you choose the this that you believe is best for you. Awesome. If you got results this year, that's one of the reasons why. If you didn't get results this year, that's also one of the reasons why. Because you said every time you had that inkling, you knew what you should do, and you didn't do it, you do have to unfortunately pay the piper eventually.
Because if you can't discipline yourself to keep the promises you make to your higher self, we all have a choice. You do something today that your future self will thank you for. If all you ever do is that, you're going to have a very boring life. I understand that. But none of us are on that end. None of us are only doing what's best for ourselves. Like that's not the concern.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. Today, for episode number 1910, how's your yearly wrap-up look? So, Spotify did their 2024 Wrapped the other day, and for those of you who might not use Spotify, towards the end of the year, Spotify is this really cool thing that they do when you log in for the day. So it happened on, I don't know if it was maybe the beginning of the week, let's just say Monday. You log in and it says your 2024 Wrapped is here, and you click on it, and it shows you the top 5 songs, the top 5 artists, what percentage that puts you in terms of being a fan of that artist, how many minutes of music you listen to, and as a podcast host, it also shows you this is how many streams you got, all sorts of different stuff. And everybody shares it. And it's really cool because you feel good when you tag your favorite artist and say, hey, brother, or hey, sister, I listened to you 60,000 minutes of you this year. I am obsessed, low-key obsessed with you as a human being. And Alan doesn't know anything about it because I don't think he looks, but I said, well, imagine if at the end of the year, you got a self-improvement Wrapped. And it was, this is how many books you read.
Nice.
This is how many gym sessions you did.
Nice.
This is how many relationship check-ins you did.
Nice.
This is how much money you spent.
Excellent.
And then it just categorized all of that. So you had 52 arguments with your partner this year, 32 of which were because you were late, 12 of which were because misaligned activities, whatever. So 2 thoughts. 1, imagine all the data you would have to make different decisions next year. First thought. Second thought is imagine all the shit that you wouldn't do. So imagine if you got a receipt at the end of the year with all the stuff that you spent money on, and it was valuable, and then there was a list. Zoom, Audible, this. YouTube Premium, whatever. Then there was meh, mid-range, this, whatever it is. And then the bottom of the list was just dumb shit you shouldn't have bought. For me, it would be Burger King, a lot of Burger King for sure. Taco Bell. Alan's going to show off the brand tactic Pip Decks. Shout out to them for taking $800 of our dollars or whatever it was. But again,
that's world-class marketing. They got me.
But here's the thing. Even that is in the realm of education, so it could be worse.
Well, you got to actually open them, Kev, in order to...
You've opened them.
Yeah, I have. I know. I don't use them enough. My vision was to use them once per day.
Well,
and I have yet to create that habit.
As they say, you can hope in one hand and poop in the other and see which one fills up faster, son.
I never understood that saying at all. Makes no sense.
We'll talk about it after. We don't want to go through it here live in front of the people. But imagine if you knew that you were going to get receipts for everything that you did at the end of the year. Would you spend your money differently? Would you invest more time in your relationship? Would you invest more time in yourself? Whatever it might be. Just like at the beginning of the year, it can be very daunting to say, you know what, I'm going to read 12 books this year. But if you get to the end of the year and you look back and say, wow, I read 15 books this year, it wasn't that hard. Maybe next year I can do 16 or 17 or 18. So I just thought it was a cool concept, because if you can take something that works really well in entertainment and then somehow find a way to make it somewhat sexy for education, I feel like you'd be on to something with that for sure.
Well, one day I would love for us to have, and this is the vision, this is what we're intending to build, Next Level You, the best version of yourself, 1% improvement in your pocket from anywhere on the planet, completely free, Next Level University, heart-driven but no BS, holistic self-improvement for dream chasers. All of that in one pocket. Steve Jobs used to say, what if you could have 1,000 songs in your pocket? And Kevin and I say, what if you could have a coach or a mentor in your pocket? How much more on point would you stay? How much more accountable would you stay? How much more consistent would you stay? How much more would you learn? How much more would you grow? How much better would your decisions make? I've started doing this every podcast I go on. I started opening with, I want to sandwich everything aligned in gratitude. I say, I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. And then I say, I do not take it lightly to have your attention. Because what you pay attention to dictates what you say, think, do, feel, and believe, which dictates your choices, which dictates the quality of your life. So I don't take it lightly. I consider this a huge privilege and a responsibility. So anyone who's out there watching or listening, some of my clients have it tracked, how many NLU episodes. Some of them have hundreds. And I'm telling you.
Shout out to you out there.
And a lot of people, so shout out to Jenna, Odette, there's a bunch of people. And if I'm missing you, Claire, if I'm missing anyone, please reach out to me. But a lot of people have been sharing on Spotify that NLU or Conscious Couples podcast has been some of their top listened to podcasts. So I'm very, very grateful. But in the future, in the future, NLU, Next Level University, we want to build an app that helps you track your habits and metrics towards your goals and dreams, and then has AI associated with it where it can make recommendations in real time. Hey, Kev, you did... Just like we have Oura Rings. So my Oura Ring says, hey, Alan, you this quarter you slept, your average sleep score was 83, your average restfulness was 74, and your average time in bed was 11:30 p.m. or whatever it is. And eventually we want to create an AI app that helps coach you and mentor you so that you have data just like this on how many books you've read and your habits, and hey, you hydrated well this year, or whatever it is. Here's the pros, here's the cons, here's the most important wins, here's the most important improvements. And I think that's a really cool concept, and we're working on it.
So very, very honestly and transparently, I don't have much else for this episode. That was really, for me, it was like, that's my thought. I think it'd be really cool, a really cool thought, a really cool perspective. Outside of that, I don't have any stories or really anything else. So I'm just going to be very honest about that. I just thought it was a really cool concept, and I thought it was something that if I get a printout at the end of the year, one of the other reasons I've been thinking about it is my car sends me monthly reviews. It's like, you drove X amount of miles. This was your average distance. This is your average. Awesome. Everything is doing that. And I found myself... I use an app. I think it's called just Workout. Oh, it's called Strong. Same thing. Like, I go in there, and then I go to history, and it has all of my workouts, and I can show them on the calendar. And this is how long it was, and this is how much weight you lifted, and this is how many personal records you have. I find myself looking at my gym app. Like, how many times did I go to the gym before I had the Strong app? I look at Audible all the time. How many books have I read? How many pages have I read? How many hours have I consumed content on? So I don't know. I just feel like it's a very... If it's happening in entertainment, if you can cross it over to education, there's something to that. That means it's valuable. That means it's sticky. That means it's exciting. It means there's an old saying, and I don't know where I heard this, but... This was a saying. If, I don't want to say it, it's not bad. If the porn industry does it, it's usually a suggestion that it's coming to mainstream. Like, you got to think, if there's kids in the room, that VR porn happened long before VR came to people's houses, right? Like, that was a thing. I think it's the same with, like, Spotify stuff. You know how much money Spotify is putting into, putting into figuring out how do we get people to share their yearly wrap-ups? Like, they're putting millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. YouTube has yearly everything has yearly wrap-ups. I feel like if we could do it for self-improvement, it'd be cool shit.
The problem is that, and this is probably a bigger discussion, but for anyone who's listening to this show, the reason you're listening is because you want to become the best version of yourself. And that requires you to look in the mirror at where you're wasting time and effort and money.
Right.
And that's not fun. It's fun to see how much you listen to Taylor Swift or whatever. It's not fun to say, wow, I wasted a ton of time and effort this year.
No, it's not fun.
We were on a team training earlier today. We did calendar hygiene. We did Zoom and Calendly. And I was talking to the team about how I send, at the end of every year, I review my year, and I send Christina and Kevin, the chief officers group, a pie chart of where I put my time and effort. I also have a love score with love languages with Emilia, what I poured into and what I didn't. And I'm big on tracking, so we track the amount of hikes that we do. We track the amount of books that we read. We track the amount of mountains we've climbed. We've climbed 7 mountains. I like tracking because I love data, and my sleep score last night was 90. So to me, the most important thing in my coaching is figuring out what people need to be measuring, because whatever you're measuring, you're paying attention to, and whatever you're paying attention to is inevitably going to be improved upon. And that's why every athlete has their stats. I run a 4.6 100-meter dash, that's why you always have a stopwatch. Every coach in athletics has a stopwatch. They're always tracking times, and and you used to do betting on football games or whatever. So 70% of the time when they're past the 50-yard line, they XYZ. The statistics. Baseball is all statistics. If you've ever watched the movie Moneyball, it's based on a true story. And it's about the statistics of baseball and how they put together a team with very little money compared to the Yankees with $110 million. I think they put together a team that beat the Yankees with $40 million. Do
you know what team it was?
I do not, no. But I thought the stats were awesome.
It was the Oakland Athletics.
Nice. And they had the biggest streak in baseball history of winning, I guess.
I don't know, because I think this was older. This is the olden days.
Way back?
I don't know how way back, but I think the guy's name was Billy Bean.
Yes. Nice.
Shout out to Billy Bean. I don't know how old this was, but I think it was before our day a little bit.
Well, the idea here, and of course I'm going to nerd out about this because I love numbers, but everyone out there watching or listening, if you could review the year and see where you put your time and where you put your effort and where you put your money, you're going to be able to re-optimize for the next year. And I was talking to Kev earlier, and the next episode we're going to do is going to compound on this very nicely.
Oh, it's going to be painful.
Because Kev will be sharing a video that was 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, of him. And the point of this is, imagine if you could look at the data of the last 10 years of the choices that you've made. But here's the thing that I really want to make land. Kevin just mentioned how it's painful. Yes, it's painful to watch that video. Every time we went back and watched 604 or 614 or something from the studio, just painful. And you said something about I look like a little boy, or you sound like a little boy. You said something like that.
I don't remember, but both probably.
Yeah, most likely.
You look and sound like a little boy.
And that feels not good in the moment. It's embarrassing. However, when you do watch that episode or that video, or you look at those photos, you can go, okay, what was I doing back then? What was I saying back then? You can reflect and you can say, I'm going to improve now. And so improvement, I think, comes from knowledge plus experience plus reflection. And what Kevin's talking about in this episode essentially is Spotify is letting you know what music you listen to. Have you gone back and asked yourself, how many books let's take an assessment. How many books did you read this year? How many hours did you spend on Netflix versus how many hours you spent reading books? How many hours did you spend on Spotify versus how many hours you spent listening to a self-improvement podcast? There's a murder mystery podcast that's famous or whatever. I don't even know what it is. But the point is you can listen to that podcast all you want. And I'm not trying to... I love entertainment. I love film. I watched all 9 Star Wars movies over the last month and a half with Emilia. I'm not judging, okay? Here's what I'm telling you. I'm reading way more books than I'm watching movies. And I know that this podcast will help you more than whatever murder mystery podcast you're listening to. It just will. It's not close. However, when you listen to this podcast, it's going to be every single day going, hey, have you thought of this? Hey, have you considered that maybe you're not as humble as you thought? Hey, have you considered that maybe you're not dialed in like you thought? Hey, have you considered that maybe you're not as consistent as you hoped? Hey, have you considered... The weird paradox here is the more you look at the hard stuff, the more power and empowerment you have to actually change that stuff. And so what I've found is that the people who avoid looking at the hard stuff, they end up 5, 10, 15 years down the road very regretful that they didn't read more books. And the very last thing I'll say, I promise this, is no one is going to wake up 10, 15, 20 years from now and go, you know what really threw me off the rails? I read too many books, man.
Let me ask you a question. Ask you a question. What do you think it's possible if somebody doesn't have the core value of growth that that would happen? Hypothetically?
No, I don't think you can regret doing something that makes you better. I don't know if I think it's against the human condition. I think the human condition would always be pumped. Like, have you ever met someone who regrets drinking too much water and hydrating too well, or regrets going to the gym? What I would say, though, is if you're going to the gym and neglecting your family.
Yeah. Or the strategy around. I've met people who regret going to the gym because they wrecked their bodies.
Right.
But that's the strategy as much, if not more, than the activity.
Yeah, and so to make this more clear, I appreciate the question. I think we regret the things in our lives that do not serve our best self. So if you, are you going to regret getting great sleep? No. Are you going to regret taking really good care of your skin? No. Are you going to regret reading self-improvement books? Probably not. Right. However, you might regret binge drinking. I do. You might regret investing in toxic relationships. I do. And I've also forgiven myself for those things. However, I think it's important. I said this in book club. Looking back at the things that you did that you maybe wish you had done things differently, that doesn't mean shame yourself and make yourself feel even worse about it. What it means is now you have an opportunity to shift.
I'm sure we'll do a yearly wrap up towards the end. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe I don't know. I always get nervous about stuff like that because it's like, well, how valuable is it if we share the stuff that we did this year? I don't know. Maybe it will be. I don't know. But if you feel like you got better results than you've gotten in the past, look back and figure out why. And I'm willing to bet it's in a lot of the stuff that you forgot you were doing. If you didn't get great results this year, look back and reflect, because I'm willing to bet it's probably a lot of the stuff that you forgot you weren't doing. Or maybe you got really good results this year because every time you got in the car, like me, this is me, 6 minutes, I'm going to the gym to do legs. I want to listen to some hard rock. And I'm listening to a Jim Collins book. When I leave the gym, it's like, I'm going home to work. I want to listen to music. Just hit Audible, man. Just click Audible, let Audible do its thing. I try to do that every time, and I think I will be grateful for that. So every time you have that this or this, you choose the this that you believe is best for you. Awesome. If you got results this year, that's one of the reasons why. If you didn't get results this year, that's also one of the reasons why. Because you said every time you had that inkling, you knew what you should do, and you didn't do it, you do have to unfortunately pay the piper eventually. I don't know what that means. I don't know who the piper is. I've never met the man or woman. But evidently there's someone you have to give a toll to. You ever met the piper?
NLU listener, what is happening? I just wanted to jump in here and let you know, if you want to get to the next level faster, we have a free virtual monthly meetup at the first Thursday of every month. You can connect with like-minded people and become a bigger part of this amazing global community. The link to register will be in the show notes. No. A lot of people right now are probably thinking to themselves, well, I'll never forget this. This was a playful version of YOLO. I had a friend, his name was Kiki, and he said, well, if I die tomorrow, I'll regret not eating the rest of these Oreos. And I thought it was hilarious, and I laughed. But I also think it's really stupid. And the reason I think it's really stupid is because people always say, well, what if I die tomorrow? Here's the truth. What if you don't? You're never going to regret maximizing the quality of your life. I had a conversation with a client recently, And I said, who do you think has a higher quality of life, myself or you? And she doesn't mind questions like this. We have a very good relationship. She said, you. And I said, why? I agree with you. I have a higher quality of life than you do. I know that, and that's okay. Why? Why? And then we went into it. Okay, well, you have that opportunity too. I have a way higher quality of life than I did 10 years ago when I was making poor choices. All of us make choices. We all have the freedom to choose water or soda. We all have the freedom to choose a salad or pizza. We all have the freedom to choose a book or pornography, to Kevin's point. I am a happier, healthier, more productive, more fulfilled, more virtuous, more well-rounded, higher quality of life version of myself now that I've opted out of most of those things. I still have a pizza every now and then. I still get McDonald's every now and then. I'm not trying to be perfect. I am trying to get more percentage on the side of taking really good care of myself. Everyone imagine you have a child, whether you do or don't. Imagine you have a child. What do you want for that child? You want them to make good choices. You want them to hydrate well and sleep well and take care of their brain and read good books and drink deeply from deep relationships. You don't want them at the club. I'm not saying you can't club. You got to let it ride. You got to have fun. Trust me, you got to, because otherwise you'll regret not having any fun. But what you want for your child is for them to embark on a journey that they are consistently improving themselves and improving their relationships and improving their health and improving their wealth and building wealth and having a high quality of life. A high quality of life is a byproduct of great choices, and great choices is a byproduct of intelligence and emotional intelligence and self-discipline. And I was thinking about this recently, very last thing. Self-discipline, I don't think you can have real, authentic self-love. We were studying self-worth theory on an episode a few times ago, and the pyramid was self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-something, and then self-love at the pinnacle. And I was thinking to myself, can you actually have self-love without self-discipline? Because if you can't discipline yourself to keep the promises you make to your higher self, we all have a choice. You do something today that your future self will thank you for. If all you ever do is that, you're going to have a very boring life. I understand that. But none of us are on that end. None of us are only doing what's best for ourselves. Like that's not the concern. I don't think. I mean, I don't know anyone. I coach some really high-performing people. I don't know anyone who is perfect at making optimal choices toward their best self.
Got to let it ride every once in a while.
You got to. I mean, you had a good night last night, you said?
How effing dare you? Yeah, I had some whiskey last night. Yep.
And current Kevin enjoyed that. Yeah. And future Kevin may or may not wish that he had done that less.
It's hard to know. I'm always thinking about it. Like how much, trying, right, to the degree that you can really understand. It's like how much is this hurting me in the long run? Like what's one night? Like what does that equate to? Don't know. I know it's less than 2. And I know it's more than none. But I also, to your point, it's like, do I want to be the guy who says, and again, shout out to anybody who does. Do I want to be the guy who says, I think 96-year-old Kev would be really pissed that he had this glass of whiskey. I don't think so. I don't think I want to be that guy.
Then there's the good choice.
We had a team call this morning, and I was like, everybody else probably had just a low-key Friday, reading their books, tucked into bed at 9, and I'm out drinking whiskey. And I'm going to show up to the team call, and I'm going to show up, of course. Come on, that's going to be fine. But yeah, I was like, I'm like the reckless child in the family. Sometimes I feel that way. But I also think, number one, I'm the least reckless I've ever been, for sure. And then number two, I don't ever aspire to be as, for lack of better phrasing, as squeaky clean as Alan. I thought I had to be for a long time when I was trying to be Alan and Alan was trying to be me. I think it's just important not to overswing, right? That doesn't mean I can have 4 whiskeys a night. That's not what I'm saying. Right? It's very hard to run a self-improvement company if you're a functioning alcoholic. You know?
What's your wrap up on all this? Because this is a very philosophical discussion that it's hard to know. I do know the average life expectancy is 78. And if you want a high quality life in your 70s, you're going to have to make different choices than someone who just lets it ride and doesn't care, right? And people are like, well, my grandma lived to 94 and she smoked her whole life. That doesn't mean that smoking doesn't kill. It just means that your grandma got lucky. Yep. And that's a cognitive bias. And so at the end of the day, what do you think is your... Because I'm on the extreme side of this. I do understand that. I do believe that I prioritize my best self above my current self. I would say more percentage than I ever have, and probably more percentage than most people. And I don't think I will regret that. I can tell you what I do regret, which is the times I didn't do that. And I'll tell you what, I let it fucking ride for a long time. And I looked like shit and felt like shit. And I'm never going back. And so what is your take?
I think it's about defining what optimal is. There's the, I'm not here for a long time, I'm here for a good time. Like that's, some people do that. You ever think of, I used to love the show Jackass. Yeah. And I think about how insanely reckless those humans are.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they care. There's a piece of me that I feel like that's what lights them up. Now, some of them got into drugs and bad things have happened, but Johnny Knoxville, the dude went from like a rollerblading, the first episode I ever saw, I think it was the first episode, he tried to rollerblade across some little river and broke his ankle. He went from that to being in the Dukes of Hazzard reboot and like being a movie star. Like interesting. It's a pretty interesting thing. So I think it depends on you. You have to know. I don't know. I don't think having one whiskey 4 times in a night, once a month, play the numbers out, is that bad. And I don't think it's beyond the line that will affect me too much. If I did...
You also don't have any goals that require you not to do that. I think that's one of the things that comes...
Yeah.
And if
I'm
you
in
were
a
to
bulk.
sit, John...
Right now I'm in a bulk. So here's the other thing. When I'm dieting, I do things completely different. Yeah. I almost don't drink at all because I'm not going to waste the calories on whiskey. That's just not worth it. So yeah, that's a piece of it too.
Well, if you were to sit John Knoxville down and have him really be vulnerable and honest, he would say most likely that he regrets a lot of that stuff.
Well, maybe I'll do it one day, but not on this podcast. It'll be a different podcast about.
But he might be in rationalization land where it's like, no, I had a blast. I mean, I had a blast when I was younger. I had the party house. I partied in college. I partied in corporate. I had a blast, and I always joke. I say I partied enough for 12 lifetimes. So I do regret a lot of it, though. Not in the sense of I feel like I'm a bad person or anything. From the sense of there were better options.
Why do I not regret it? Because I'm an idiot?
I think you're less aware of the upside of what could have been.
That's fair.
Like, and I think that mathematically, and anyone can go to a financial calculator and do this. I did this with my client Cole. Shout out to Cole again. I said, let's crunch the numbers on this. Put $1 into a financial calculator. And we calculated, because in 25 years, he's going to be 45. No, he's going to be 50. And I'm going to be 60. And we did, there's something called the 25-year framework. And essentially what it means is it's 100 quarters. So all my clients do quarterly goals. What could you achieve with 100 quarters? Whoa. Compounded on top of each other. There's a book called The 12-Week Year that talks about how you can learn how to achieve more in one quarter than most people do all year. And this is going to compound really nicely on tomorrow's episode, because tomorrow's episode is going to be 10 years of old Kevin versus new Kevin. And this is very scary for me to share, because when you put $1 in a financial calculator and you grow it by 0.1%, and multiply 25 times 365, you get 9,125. So if you put $1 in a financial calculator and you grow it by 0.1% for 9,125 days, it becomes $144,000 or something. So you're 144,000 times smarter, 144,000 times more capable. I would have to do it. Like, I don't remember the exact number. So no one quote me on this right now. I have a financial calculator bookmarked, but here's what I showed Cole. I said, what happens when I do 0.2% instead of 0.1? And he's like, I don't know. It's going to double. 10x's. It 10x's. Just a little more effort each day. 10x's the long term. That's just it's the power of the compound effect. That's my favorite book. It was my favorite book for the longest time. Now it's Rationality. But it's not because of the author. It's not because of the book. It's because that's the Einstein called compound interest, the eighth wonder of the world. My mentor said the credit card companies are lining their pockets with your ignorance. The truth is that people just don't know how to calculate compounding. Just like you looking at that video of you 10 years ago going,
everybody's going to see it.
Well, let's get into that episode, because that, when you say, am I just an idiot? No, of course not. You don't really know, though. If people really knew, I wish I could do a split test. Kevin A, Kevin B. I wish I could show Kev the version of him that listens to this podcast every day versus the version of him that listens to music every day. It wouldn't be close. It wouldn't even be remotely
But the
close.
person has to decide whether that sacrifice is too much.
But that's based on a calculation they aren't doing.
But even if they were, again, Alan and I have had this conversation. If I told you, if you did these 10 things every day for a year, you get $1 million at the end of the year, how many people would actually do it? I'm still willing to bet a lot of people wouldn't.
What if it was 100 million?
Depends on what the things were.
What if it was the love, the relationship of your dreams? What if it was fulfillment? What if it was the highest quality of life?
You can't guarantee it.
Mathematically, you can, though.
Yeah,
like, the version of Kevin who listens to NLU every day is mathematically better than the version of Kevin who doesn't, no matter what.
I know, but am I mathematically better enough to make it worth it?
It would come down to your goals.
Because
yeah,
I also have
if your
to
goal
do
is fulfillment,
other stuff. I can't just listen to the podcast. Like, I got to go do some shit after.
Yeah, this is the philosophical discussion the whole company is built on, and I believe that fulfillment comes as a byproduct of reaching your own unique potential. I don't believe anyone we can all do this. Think about the time when you were the most miserable. It's when you weren't growing and you were taking quick fixes and you most likely were into drugs or alcohol or pornography. You most likely were not in control of your own future. You most likely were not believing in yourself and had low self-worth. You weren't doing self-improvement. Everyone think about the least happy you've ever been, the most miserable you've ever been. Most likely, it's when you felt hopeless and helpless, and you most likely were not focused on your own self-improvement. And, I mean, you're never going to meet someone who's happy, healthy, productive, reading books, going to the gym, attacking their goals, dialed in, who's not fulfilled as hell. I have all the data. All my clients, I ask this question all the time. Is this the most fulfilled version of you? And they say yes. I do true, false, semi-true. A lot of my clients know. I say I blank am the most fulfilled I've ever been. I'm getting true all the time, and I can tell. I can see it on them. They're just dialed in. None of us like not being dialed in. We can't stand it. I do believe that Stephen Kotler, let's quote him instead of me. He says, not having goals we care about that force us outside our comfort zone and growth and contribution, it is bad for our neurobiology. It's bad for your neurobiology to not have meaningful work toward meaningful goals. And when we don't have meaningful work toward meaningful goals, we slip into vices. We do.
Shout out to, you know what episode it was, Stephen Kotler? You say it wrong every time.
Yeah,
last time you weren't even in the right hundreds.
I wasn't even in the right hundreds, yeah.
We did an episode with Stephen Kotler. I don't know what it was. If you go on YouTube, you go on the channel, you can just search. Alan's going to find it. All right. If you want to make sure that you're getting 1,566,426,000 times better, what do you got?
632, The Art of Impossible with Stephen Kotler.
Next
Level University.
4 something. If you want to get 4 trillion, quadrillion, bajillion times better in health, wealth, life, and love, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an opportunity to get to the next level. And that's why we do an episode every day. Because if we take a day off, all the compounding dies. And math. So make sure you're subscribed.
If anyone wants to get more accountability to make sure that they choose their highest self over their current self and do the things that your future self will thank you for, that's the point of the coaching. Goals, metrics, habits, skills, identity. And at the end of the day, no one can tell you, including Kevin and I, what you should be doing. But all of us have this whisper inside of us that says, you can do better than this. You are better than this, and you know it. Let's go. If you want someone to help you with that, that is literally what I do. And I know a lot of clients would attest to this. Ultimately, when they're in alignment with their goals and dreams, they end up fulfilled as a byproduct. The happiest, healthiest, most productive versions of themselves. And then unfortunately, sometimes we slip into the doom loop. We start feeling sorry for ourselves. We start slacking off a little bit, and then a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And all of a sudden we're completely off course, and then we're unfulfilled, and then we slip into vices and all that stuff. Everyone's been there. The goal is not to never fall off the horse. The goal is to get back on quicker and better each and every time. And that's what my coaching is all about.
Only you and I could turn a 7-minute episode into a 35-minute episode.
Yes, sir.
It's a running joke I have over at Podcast Growth University. I start an episode. I'm like, it'll probably be a pretty quick one today. 20 minutes every time, no matter what. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's always 20 minutes, at least 20 minutes. I feel like you and I multiply that by 2, pretty much. We can get 40 minutes.
Well, 5 minutes in, you're like, that's all I have.
I knew I just wanted you to know. I wanted you to know that that was kind of the end of that thought. I didn't think we'd wrap it up. I'd be okay though. 7-minute episode, 7-minute clinic. We used to do short episodes like that back in the day. It was always interesting. All right. I normally don't say this, but make sure you tune in tomorrow because we have a very special, whether you're audio or video, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting episode. I'll put it that way. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we don't have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Keep after it, Next Level Nation.